this screen. You can see right here these different tabs on the far left. They pretty much do what it shows you on there. So you have a selection arrow, you have points. So if you want to create 2 points, click on the point tool and just plot your 2 points located anywhere on your screen. Okay, you can, anytime you are on this arrow key, you can select and deselect points. Now notice, if I select one and then the other, it's not exclusive. It'll highlight both of them. Okay, but if I tap on an empty part of the screen, it deselects everything. Okay, you can also use the drag to highlight all the stuff. All right, now, if you go up to this Construct tab up top, notice I don't have anything selected, so all of these commands are hidden. They don't open up unless you have enough pieces of information to open them. So you can also see there's some shortcuts. Control M is midpoint, Control I intersection, Control L is line segment. Okay, so if you wanted to connect these 2 points with a line segment, what you could do is highlight them. Okay, and then you can hit Control L if you remember. Okay. You could also highlight them, go to Construct, and then choose the command segment if that's what you want. If you want array or a line, you would have to identify it using the Construct tab. So if I wanted a line that passes through those, use Construct. Okay. Again, with the other, as with the regular Office Suite stuff, Control Z will undo anything that you do. So you could undo any action using Control Z. Okay. So what we're doing right now is we're doing triangles, right? So if you take your point tool, place another point somewhere on here, and I want you to form a triangle out of those. Okay. What were some of the ideas on how to form a triangle from those 3 points? So you could highlight 2 of them, hit Control L, or choose Construct Segment. Okay. You could also highlight all 3 of them, hit Control L, and it'll connect them as a polygon, which would be the fastest way to do that. All right, now, this program can also label your points. Okay, which of these tabs do you think is the labeling tool? Yeah, you guys are intuitive. So if you click on A, okay, notice as you tap these, it identifies the letter to correspond with them. Okay, and then you can drag the letter around. You can't drag it everywhere. You can just drag it within a little radius of the point. Okay, but it allows you to name these points. Okay. If you ever wanted to change the name, you could just double click it or tap on it, and you could change that name to whatever you want. Okay. Alan? All right, now let's say you want to measure these angles. Okay, so again, in this chapter, we were talking about the sum of the angles in a triangle. Okay, in order to measure angles, how many points does it take to define an angle? 3. Okay, it's the same thing when you define and want to calculate and measure the angle. So if we want to calculate or measure angle A, what we would need to do is select 3 points that designate angle A. Okay. A needs to be the middle point, just like when you name it. So if we put, again, go to the arrow key, the select tool, click on C, then A, then B. The order matters. Okay, it will designate the order. Okay, once you have all 3 of those selected, and you selected them in that order, and again, make sure no sides are selected, okay, you can go up to Measure. And when you click on Angle, it will tell you what the angle measure is. And again, you see that it put it in the order that you selected them. C, then A, then B. All right, so if you want to find the measure of angle B, again, you need to deselect this. It's highlighted automatically. You need to deselect it, so just tap anywhere on the blank part of the screen. And now angle B is ABC. And we can go up to Measure that angle. So that angle is about 49 degrees. Okay, deselect. We can now find angle C by tapping B, then C, then A, choosing Measure, Angle. And now, we've talked about it, but what is the sum of these angles? It should be 180, right? In order to verify this using this dynamic software, if we go back to measure without anything highlighted, you see this little calculate button. When you click on calculate, it brings up a screen that looks like a calculator. And what you can do is you can either type in numbers, you can type in functions, so when we get to trig, we'll come back here to verify. You can also tap the actual measures. So if we want to measure, or if we want to take the sum of angle A, you tap this measurement right here, plus B, tap the measurement, plus C, and when you hit OK, you should verify what's the sum of the angles? 180. Okay, now what happens if we drag our point C so that all these angles change? What's the sum of the angles still? 180. What if we move B over here? Okay, those angles change, but does the sum of them ever change? No. Okay, so this would be a way of verifying that you have a triangle whose sum of angles is 180. Extension of line. Good. Let's say we want to extend these lines. Okay, so let's say we take this line EF and I want to extend it out. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the 2 points. Okay, up to construct. To extend it, I have to extend it using what? Line. So I hit line and now it extends. So no matter where I put this, even if I adjust it, that line stays relative to those segments. Okay. So again, if you select 2 points of the triangle, hit construct line, it'll extend that line. All right, if you want to put, let's say we want to place point G somewhere on this line that falls outside the triangle. So click on the point tool. Okay, and then as you can see, once your cursor goes over the line, it highlights that line. So you know that your point is contained on that line. If you place it up here, it's not highlighted. Okay, so you know it's not directly tied to that line. We want it to be tied to the line. If we put it on this line and label it G, again, it goes in alphabetical order, so unless, I mean, if you've been playing around with it, you might not be at letter G. Okay? You might have to write it in on your own. But once again, what's going to happen with that is that stays relative to it. It'll stay on that line no matter where you move it, which is what we want, so we can see the relationships. Okay, now that you have this point G located there, I want you to see if you can verify with a calculation that the exterior angle is equal to the sum of the remote interior angles. Okay, so see if you can use what you know about exterior angles and what we just talked about with measurement to verify using calculations like we just did with the 180 degrees that the exterior angle is equal to the sum of the remote interiors. Angle GFD, let's find what that measure is. And so that measure is 122.48. So what should that equal? That should be equal to what two angles? D and E. So let's test it. Let's take and calculate what is the sum of angles D plus E. And what do we see? And again, the idea on this is, let's move this around. And what happens? The exterior angle is still equal to the sum of the remote interiors. No matter where you move it, that relationship will always hold true. All right, so Control N or go up to File and go New Sketch. I'll clear it. The old one's still there if you needed to look at it. Okay. But I'm going to do a new sketch. And I just want to show you how to do some of the actual compass constructions on here. Okay, so start with a segment. Okay, if you want to bisect this segment, okay, it's really easy. Okay. If you click the actual segment itself and hit Control M, places a midpoint on your segment. Okay, so you don't even need to do constructions on that. Okay, so there's our midpoint. Now, if we wanted to do a construction, do you guys remember back from Chapter 2? what would you have to do for the construction? Leah? Okay, so one of the ways that we could do that is, okay, so this circle tool is your compass tool. So wherever you place the circle tool to start, it's going to put the tip of the compass there. And then as you drag it along, it marks where the pencil of the compass would be. Okay, so if you were constructing a perpendicular bisector to this segment, what we would do is we'd extend, place the compass tip on one endpoint and extend it beyond the midpoint, right? And then we're going to take that same measurement from the other endpoint. So in order to designate this measurement, what you would have to do is you'd have to create a radius for this circle. So to create a radius, you click on the center, the point on the circle, and then what can you do to actually designate the segment for that? The shortcut is Control L. Hit Control L. So right here what's highlighted is just the radius of that circle. Okay? So now if you place or if you highlight the center or the endpoint of the other side of that segment while this radius is highlighted, what it allows you to do under the Construct tab is choose a circle by center and radius. So now you can duplicate this circle. Okay, so this is what you would do. Basically, it's like saying that your compass remains the same setting. Click on that and it would duplicate the same circle with the same radius. Okay, so let me repeat that. All right, so if you want to use a compass, okay, what you're going to do is select the circle tool. Place your cursor on the endpoint that you want the tip of your compass to go from. Extend it again. We wanted to extend it beyond the midpoint. Now, I don't even need the point to lie on this segment. I could put it up here somewhere. It doesn't matter. Okay, but once I do my original compass setting, I need to duplicate this compass setting from the other endpoint. The way that I would do that is create a line segment that designates the radius of that circle. So click on the point that's the center, the point on the circle, and hit Control L. That designates your radius. So this now is the radius of my compass measure here. And in order to duplicate that on the other endpoint, okay, I select that point that I want this compass construction to originate from. So what this now means is from this point with this radius, under Construct, I can create a circle with that certain radius and center. Okay. So now what this allows me to do, and I'll come back and answer questions, is when we were doing these by hand, we'd connect these two intersections, right? So in order to connect these intersections, if you highlight your two circles, and if you recall under Construct, the intersections had a shortcut, Control I, so you can either go under your Construct tab and hit I, or choose that command, or you can hit Control I, and that's going to highlight the two intersections of those elements. Then if you want to draw the line connecting those, what can we use as a shortcut? Control L, and does that pass through the midpoint? Yeah, and not only does it pass through it, but what angle is created here? 90-degree angle. Right, so it's our perpendicular bisector. Yeah, well. Hey guys, a couple things to notice, and you're going to have some time today just to explore this and try to figure some things out. But if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to make a segment connecting these 2 points, but something else was already selected as well. If I tried Control L right here, nothing's going to happen. If I look under Construct, all it would let me do is perform these different types of constructions. And so you have to be careful of what's selected and not in order for things to work. Because if I deselect this, now I can connect those with a line or segment. And so if something doesn't show up or it's hidden, it probably means that you have the wrong things selected. So you just deselect everything, tap in an empty part of the screen, and then choose what to go through. Okay. All right, if you had a point off a line and you wanted to construct a perpendicular through this point to this line. Okay? And I'm going to have you guys kind of go through and just see what all you can do on this here in a sec. But if you connect or highlight the segment that you want the line to be perpendicular to, select the point that you want it to pass through, and then go to construct. You can choose. Here's now you have a perpendicular through that point. If instead of a perpendicular, I wanted to do a parallel through this point to this line, once I highlight both of those, now here's a line that's parallel. And once again, the nice thing is these are all directly tied to one another when you use that construction tool. So that anytime you move one thing, everything else moves, and you can see the relationship between those. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about here before I let you go is if you want to designate an arc of a circle. It's the next thing that's not necessarily intuitive, but I want you to understand how it works. If all I wanted to show was this portion of the, so I didn't want to show this whole circle here, I only wanted to show a portion of it. And so let's say I only wanted to go from this point to this point, and then from this point to this point. So all I want to see are basically like the markings that it would look like on a sheet of paper if you guys did it by hand. In order to identify arcs, and you have to follow this procedure. It goes counterclockwise, and so you need to remember that. So if I want this arc from here to here, what I'm going to have to do is start with the point, move in a counterclockwise direction and tap the circle, and then the end point. Okay, once I do that, I can go to construct and choose arc on a circle, and now it designates only that portion of the circle's arc. Okay? So if I were doing it on this other side, again, knowing that it works counterclockwise, which point would I need to start with? The top one or the bottom? We need to start with the top one, right? So we select the top one. There's our starting point of the arc. Then in a counterclockwise rotation, choose which circle you want the arc to be on, and then extend it all the way to your end point. Select that. Once you've selected all those, you can go to your construct and choose arc on a circle, and it will only designate that portion of the arc. Okay, now, the reason why this may come in handy is I may ask you at some point to hide your markings. So now, if I wanted you to hide your markings but leave just this portion that we just created, the arc, now if you go to the circles themselves and you tap on it and you hit Control-H, it'll hide your markings. So Control-H will hide everything that hasn't been created. Okay? Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's say I wanted to do just a segment of this arc up here, or a segment of this circle circumference, from this point to this point. Okay? Again, if you wanted to create the arc on a circle, choose the point that you want to start with that is furthest clockwise in your arc. Okay, so this is as far as it'll be. Then in a counterclockwise direction, choose the circle's arc that you want it to, the path that you want it to follow, and then choose the endpoint in that counterclockwise direction. When you hit construct arc on a circle, now if I hide this large circle, it's going to leave what I did before, but it'll now leave this arc as well.